Well, hello. I'm Darcy Brown, and I am the Senior Director of DEI Strategic Partnerships. And myself, as well as my colleagues, Alonzo and Serby, are super excited to be here and have conversations with you. So, before we get into what we're here to talk about today, I just wanted to share just a few things about ServiceNow for those of you who do not know us. ServiceNow was founded in 2004 by Fred Luddy. And the goal of our company always has been to help employees and organizations seamlessly work through digital workflows. Now, if you take a moment, think about your daily tasks as workflows from employee onboarding during COVID, scheduling your doctor's appointments through an online portal, ordering coffee for Starbucks, or if you're like me, going online and shopping. All of that is made possible through mobile apps. And these processes are built on workflows and they spur innovation. And it helps to make the world work better for everyone, which is our mission and goal. Now, these are just a few examples of how ServiceNow supports 80% of Fortune 500 companies, such as Starbucks, Delta Airlines, Overstock, Wayfair, the NBA, WNBA, and Zoom, which we're on right now, just to name a few. So, getting into today's session, we're excited to talk to you about how ServiceNow has made our people strategy our business strategy. We remain committed to continually building a culture that makes people not only want to work at ServiceNow, but also experience their best careers here. So we'll talk upon some aspects of what we call our people pack, which is our commitment that we've made to each other to live our best lives, do our best work, and fulfill our purpose together. Now, we know that people's best work happens when they can live their best lives and share their talents. So ServiceNow is working diligently to make that possible. And our people pack is rooted in welcoming and celebrating people from all backgrounds because that's how we build belonging. We hire with intention, recruiting diverse talent across all levels while creating equitable experiences and programs that support a broad range of career paths. So, enough about all of that. It's time for me to dig in and introduce you to our fantastic panelists that we have today. So, Alonzo Blackstock. Alonzo is the Senior Regional Director for the Alliance and Channel Ecosystem business in the UK and Ireland, with responsibilities for delivering on ServiceNow's transformational vision and business outcomes with our ServiceNow partners. Prior to ServiceNow, Alonzo spent 3 years leading the VMware channel organization in the UK and Ireland. And prior to that, he spent 12 years at Cisco in professional services, sales, and partner management roles. He describes himself as someone with passion and integrity who thrives on acquiring new skills and experiences and is a firm ally when it comes to the advancement of women. Alonzo is also an MBA graduate from Warwick Business School. He lives in Oxford with his wife and two boys. Now, we have Mrs. Serby, I'm sorry, who is part of our ServiceNow diversity, equity, and inclusion team. I have the pleasure of working with her every day. And she leads strategy building locally for the EMEA and APJ regions, as well as globally for our technology teams across the organization. As a regional leader for DEI, she leads ServiceNow's efforts to strengthen the inclusive culture, ensure employees are treated equitably, and create an even deeper sense of belonging while also ensuring the unique needs of the regions are addressed. As the DEI business partner, she supports key IT and engineering functions with ServiceNow and is helping them focus on DEI goals globally, as well as implementing inclusion strategies that foster sustainable change. Serby holds a master's in business administration from Hybridad in England, or a hybrid in India, and is currently residing in London with her husband and 2 daughters. Please excuse me, I've only had 1 cup of coffee, so. But thank you both for joining us, and let's dive into our conversation. Now, one of the strongest ways that a company can break barriers is to promote an inclusive workplace culture. At ServiceNow, we've increased representation of women globally. Serbi, as a DEI business partner, would you share some of the ways that we're making that happen?
Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm so excited to get into the details with this amazing group of people today. I think the first thing that comes to mind when you mention culture, Darcy, is the people pack that you mentioned. I think having such a great foundation, which is not only implementable across a multitude of enterprise like ours and serves our efforts of being the best in the industry, but is also flexible enough to be adopted from an individual employee perspective, really sets the tone in terms of what is the kind of culture that we want to scale across the board. I think one other thing that we have been very mindful of as we go through what our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy is going to be is making sure that it's a holistic approach, right? I wish improving representation of whether it is women or underrepresented groups was as simple as just hiring them into the workforce. Unfortunately, it's not, but it also presents to us multiple opportunities of how do we not just hire great talent into the organization, but also make sure that they get the support on career development, on the right roles and opportunities to showcase their talent, and also make sure that the culture around them is conducive to that growth. We are awaiting our final numbers for 2023, but I can definitely tell you in 2022, we grew our representation of women across our business and women in leadership positions. Additionally, our employee engagement survey results really reflect how every individual employee in the organization understands DEI, values the efforts that we are making to make sure that the global teams across multiple different countries are prioritized and are leading through inclusion. One of the key examples that I want to mention here for everyone on how are we trying to make sure that the environment changes is through our partnership with Praxis Labs. We are offering immersive learning experiences to our employees, which help build empathy skills and help them understand in a first-person perspective what different experiences look like through immersive simulations right from the comfort of their laptops. We also enable that with discussions which are in person, which are safe spaces for them to come and express what they have experienced and gather and garner learnings out of it. These simulations can range from microaggressions in interviews to allyship in career development and advancement conversations, and it has had a real impact on how inclusion as an action is being perceived by our employees. Following this training, 89% of learners reported an increase in empathy, and almost 84% reported an increase in the confidence to act. And I think that's one of the key tenets towards active allyship across the organization. The last thing that we have continually focused on as part of our DEI strategy is intersectionality. It would be such a missed opportunity if we were looking at individuals as just one part of their identity, but we are very complex as human beings and we are made up of these different experiences that we go through. We launched a new global series called Be You with ServiceNow, Courageous Conversations, and we had a great kickoff in Amsterdam and multiple sessions across the globe in India, APAC, as well as in the Americas. And the purpose of this initiative or these multitudes of conversations was to focus on the complexities of not just diversity, but also identity in the workplace. What are the different aspects of yourself that are governing how you present yourself at work? These were safe spaces for our employees to share their personal identity journeys. And we had amazing partnership with our local, regional, as well as global leaders as well, who were so vulnerable and so open and honest in sharing stories about their own learnings and their own identities. What we did after that was invited employee panels to share not just about their experiences, but also how are they using those to make sure that each of them are fostering a culture where they can show up to work in their authentic selves. And then, of course, the most important part is when each of us does want to show up as our authentic selves, in return, we need to be accepted and we need to feel like we're part of our community.
wonderful. And thank you, Serbi. We are definitely committed to making changes across all regions. So thank you for walking us through all of that. Now, an additional opportunity to break barriers is through mentorship and a support network. Alonzo, would you walk us through what we're doing as a company, as well as your personal perspective as a leader?
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, I certainly will do. And I really, really appreciate being on this panel to share this conversation with you all. So yeah, I've been at ServiceNow for just over 3.5 years, actually almost 4 years now, and it's a great place to be. One of the things that I first got introduced to when I joined ServiceNow is our employee belonging groups. We currently have 9 employee belonging groups globally, 4 of which actually have a chapter within our Europe, Middle East, and Africa region, EMEA region, which includes women at ServiceNow, Black at ServiceNow, Pride at ServiceNow, families at ServiceNow. And also in January, we will be launching an EMEA chapter of True Ability, which is really focused, True Ability at ServiceNow, which is really focused and advocating for people with disabilities, enhanced accessibility, and experiences that benefit all. We've increased our membership of these employee belonging groups by around 42% over the past year or so. So it's a really significant resource that we leverage right across our organization, including here in EMEA. And added to that, and providing more support to our employees, we launched a suite of tools back in 2022 to offer guidance, education, enablement to our managers and employees on their career development and on their role success, in terms of how to, not just in terms of like performance, but really kind of like development and what the success looks like. These tools help our employees receive really pertinent and timely feedback that helps them kind of like move forward on their development of their career, celebrate wins, celebrate successes. And it also helps managers to make sure that they have good and meaningful conversations around performance and career conversations, and supporting employees in setting and achieving their goals. So that's a really strong kind of like organizational based support for making sure that we really take our employees' careers and development seriously in our organization. Also supporting employees' well-being is really, really important in our organization, particularly after what we've all come through in terms of the COVID period. And also what we're currently going through in terms of the challenges of this economic environment that we all face ourselves in right across the world, right? So I think it's really critical for us to have, our own time, personal time, family time. And I think it's really critical to have that kind of like reset, that restart, that energy boost. So one of the things that we do is that we offer well-being days to all of our employees right across the globe. It's a company-wide day off. We do actually 6 of those, so 6 days per year, over and above your holidays, your paid time off, over and above the national holidays in your region. It's an additional 6 days specifically, focused on rest and recharging. And we kind of like encourage everybody to share photos of what they've done for that day. Some people have been on the river on a boat. Other people have been relaxing or yoga or cycling. So just to make sure that we are really recharging and resting. And also with many other companies, we do have a comprehensive set of benefits in our benefits plan, offers physical and emotional, financial well-being programs through what we call our employee assistance program. We do also have Rethink Care, which is specifically targeted as a support program to help parents and caregivers of children with developmental disabilities or behavioral challenges or learning difficulties. That's really important for a particular group of parents right across the world. And we also finally have like a future work policy to help reflect and normalize the new ways of working and growing in a global and distributed workforce. We know, again, post-COVID, that future work policy is really important to us to actually make sure we reflect some of those global challenges. We reflect some of the needs of our employees and the disparate nature of where employees and expertise are right across the globe. And that is reflected in our future work policy. And as a result of this focus on our people, we actually have been, not surprisingly, certified as a great place to work for the past 4 years. It's a real testament to the work that we've done.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Now, I want to kind of double back a little bit with you, Alonzo. When you think about mentoring and support for yourself as a leader and impacting people, not only in your direct line of your organization, but even those outside, what are some things that you've committed to or you are encouraging your peers to do to really help push through and break those barriers?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of mentoring, I think it's important to, as I say, cast your net wide in terms of providing or being a mentor. First of all, I think it's really important to cast your net wide. And I say that in the context of the organization that you're in. Sometimes it's easy to be seen as a mentor within your function or within your department. So I think it's important to cast your net wide. But I think one of the challenges that others have outside of your department is that they may not have enough insights or views of your organization, right? So casting your net wide is really important so that people can get access and actually information and knowledge around different parts of the organization that may be attracted to them. I think it's also important to cast your net wide outside of the organization because that's also for you, for your organization, or for me, it's a source of potential talent coming into the organization. But also it's the same thing, right? There are the amount of people that I see, particularly people of color and particularly women who kind of don't have a concern in terms of whether they would fit in or whether it's the type of organization for them. I think casting your net wide really helps that, right? So to actually really kind of like give some guidance and support around how to kind of like advance your career and be in organizations like this. So I think it's important just to really, really cast your net wide. I think it's also important as a mentor to be committed. I find it's not enough to have one mentor session and that's a mentor. I think you have to be committed, and I think you have to be committed for a period of time on both sides. But I think it's really important from a mentor perspective that the mentee sees you being committed over a long period of time. You're here for the journey. So I think it's important to be committed. And I think the other thing is really important as a mentor is to listen. I think we tend to, as mentors, think or be perceived as the wise owls or the fountain of knowledge and all those things. I think it's important to listen to understand before you give any guidance or support or whatever you do. Listening is a really, really strong skill in terms of mentoring. And then the final thing that I'll say is share your experience. Share your experience in terms of how you got here, how what the challenges that you had, what are the challenges that you faced, how you got over those challenges, how you kind of like navigated your career in your world. So I think those are the things I'd say, Darius, would be the things that I would kind of like give my perspective on in terms of mentorship.
I love all of that. You touched on how not only, how we as a company are breaking barriers, but you also gave some insight for our audience in how they can break barriers. Because one of the biggest things that I gleaned out of that was not only that. As someone who's looking to grow their career, looking to expand, you have to break through that barrier, that internal barrier that you might have within yourself and within your mind, that you only have the select group that you can kind of work through. But then also you reminded those of us that do have the opportunity to mentor others. You provided some pretty sage advice on things that I think sometimes with the rush of work or the heaviness of our workload, sometimes that we might forget to pause and to listen so that we understand and can help others, not only through sharing our stories, but understanding where they are. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
So I also want to hear from both of you on what you're seeing and what you're doing to continue breaking barriers to foster more diverse leadership. And that is, Serbi, you touched on intersectionality. So when we think about our Power to Fly audience, I mean, you could not find probably a greater group of intersectionality. So Alonzo, I'm gonna stay with you, and then I'm gonna ask Serbi for you to kind of come in on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, we really do realize that there's a need, particularly with underrepresented groups in terms of participation, right? Particularly around kind of like early in career and manager development programs. So I think we are increasing some of the things that we can try to do to really kind of like support some of these underrepresented groups. One of the programs that we did, I want to highlight in particular, is what we call our Power of 10 program, which offers women employees mentorship opportunities that speak to their needs. So we launched this program in 2019, and it's been absolutely amazing, actually. Since then, it's given women the opportunity to cultivate a culture and a community of mutual support. So this is very much around mutual support, development, and advocacy. We've had almost 1,000 participants in this program, the Power of 10, in the 2022-2023 cohort. And they were placed in peer mentoring circles of 8 to 10 women right across the company. Really, really powerful. I know a number of the women in my region in the UK and EMEA that participated in that. And it just gave them so much of that kind of like development and advocacy that was mentioned before, which helped kind of like move forward in their careers. It's been a fantastic program. I know also other parts of the employee belonging groups are taking that capability and trying to introduce it for themselves. So I know we're doing something in the Black at ServiceNow very much aligned to the success of this.
Serbi?
Yes, I think totally attest to Power of 10. I've been a participant in the past, and it has done wonders in just expanding my network across the organization. So totally agree with you, Alonzo, when you say that was a game changer for a lot of women at ServiceNow. I think in my perspective, when you talk about diversity of leadership, it's not just about the makeup of our leadership team, but it's also about how we lead. I think the only constant across the enterprise and the software industry is change, and our leaders have had to continuously adapt to the various things and the various ways of working and the different generations and different persona types that continue to influx into the workforce. I think for us at ServiceNow, one of the key aspects of aligning various styles of leaderships towards one common goal has been the fact that create belonging is a value for us. It's one of 4 very key values through which the entire organization funnels their efforts efforts into building our inclusive and scalable culture. So having that as the North Star, having that as the North Star for any activity that a leader would want to, lead with, has been very, very important. It's also very important to understand, like Alonso said, leaders should not have all the answers to all the questions. But as an organization, and particularly in my role as a DEI business partner, it's very critical for us to equip leaders with the tools that foster honest, authentic conversation. And so simple examples like in the hiring process, right? I get the opportunity across the tech function to partner with multiple functional leaders to make sure that their focus continues to remain on improving the employee experience. It's not just about the numbers of how many did you hire, how many did we attract from the organization, but it's also about, as an example, right? How many women did we interview for a particular role in the organization? But it's also about what was their experience like. Was it inclusive for the women and the candidates who were coming to us? How are we tackling bias in the performance management system, right? It's not about who's doing the right thing and who's doing the wrong thing, but it's more about re-examining the process and breaking those barriers of bias that tend to creep in because they no longer serve the purpose for the new workforce of today. So a lot of the breaking barriers in leadership is also our leadership teams needing to reevaluate what their North Star is, reevaluate what their core or their purpose is, and making sure that their actions of leadership match with that.
Love it. I too was part power of 10. And I still, it's great to have those connections across the company because you don't know when you're going to need somebody. But when things come up, you can say, oh, I know someone in that group. I can reach out. Or if they're not the right person, they will quickly put you in touch with who you need to talk to. And Serbi, you're right. As a leader, things change, especially when you start thinking about the space of tech. Things change so quickly. And being able to have the agility as a leader is imperative because not only do you have to be able to make that change to continue to move business forward, but your employees aren't a monolith. And you, as a leader, you want to welcome those new ideas and new ways of doing things because sometimes they're right and sometimes they have better answers than we do. So being able to kind of embrace that and to seamlessly pivot and move is really key. So it's definitely something I think that we should be proud of as a company that we do. So I have a question, which I'm sure is top of mind for a majority of our audience, and that is closing the gender pay gap. So regardless of where you sit in the world, as women, we know that many times in corporate America, we face challenges with pay equity. So could you go into kind of what ServiceNow is doing to help ensure that we are achieving pay equity?
Yep, absolutely. I think one of the primary measures of equity in the workplace is pay parity, and this is the reason why equity as a concept has gained steam in the world of DEI, because it's all about enhancing these processes. It's all about fixing the places where it's broken, right? As an organization, we are very proud that we have continued to maintain systematic gender pay equity company-wide and across the globe, as well as across race and ethnicity in the US. And this is not a small feat. The way we're able to do it is we track and manage pay equity using a third party, which goes down into the depths and the details of analyzing base salaries, bonuses, commissions. From there, we use that information as an organization and adjust compensation packages when necessary. However, this is not meant to be a one-time activity if we're not fixing broken processes alongside any efforts that we make to bridge any gaps. In 2022, we intensified some of our efforts towards pay equity through a third-party assessment of our end-to-end ESG metric governance process to make sure that we are adhering to the best practices. This resulted in several suggested changes to reinforce our commitment to pay equity. Like I mentioned for the previous question that you posed, Darcy, change is the only constant, and we need to be ahead of the curve all the time to be able to tackle and anticipate some of the things that may come our way. Consistently investing in making sure that our processes are seamless and inclusive is the primary way of driving equity. As an example, for 2022, after we did this activity, our full year global pay adjustments affected less than 1% of our employee population, and it accounted for less than 0.05% of our global payroll costs. And that's a return you get when you're consistently working on the initiative of pay equity and maintaining it throughout a consistent period of time.
Thank you for that. And that, I will say, as a woman, I am so grateful that our company is doing. As we get ready for kind of like our wrap up, I do want to encourage our audience to think about any questions you might have for Serbi or Alonzo during the upcoming Q&A section. Maybe it may have been something that we touched upon that you might want to dig a little deeper, or maybe it might just be questions, burning questions that you have for any of us. Now, one of the things that I think about when it comes to breaking barriers is doing it for the next generation. And just as previous generations have done it for us. And we want to shatter boundaries, break barriers, and build empowerment through the development of the next generation of tech professionals. We see that things are moving so fast. You can't go 15 minutes without hearing about generative AI and its impact that it will have not only on us right now, but on the future. Alonzo, can you walk us through our program we established, Rise Up and Next Gen? I think you could probably talk about it better than I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got a number of things going on in our organization, and indeed in the industry, in the tech industry as well. I think it's no secret that there's a skills shortage. There continues to be a shortage of skills, and there continues to be growth of opportunities. AI, Gen AI being the latest one, and there'll be more and more and more that will come from this. So the boundaries of technology are continuing to expand, and therefore the need for expertise. And at the same time, we're starting from a place of lack of skills. So that's a challenge that we certainly we have in the industry, and we feel that here in ServiceNow. And I think at the same time, and I've heard this a lot of times in my career from women, from people of color, from many groups, that it feels hard to get into the industry. It's kind of like the industry says, we want you, but you haven't got the experience, and therefore, there's a kind of like a chicken and egg thing there. We've always been challenged in this industry in terms of being selective in terms of where we find talent. So in the UK, I live in Oxford, and there's been this kind of like, we'll have the Oxford graduate, thank you, but maybe not the one from over here. And so we've always had a lot of those types of challenges. And I think we in ServiceNow, bringing all of those things together, I think we've addressed this head on, because we want to solve our gap in talent. But we want to do that in a way that brings in the right talent and helps with the diversity of talent that we all want in our organization. So we launched a program called Rise Up with ServiceNow. It's a global initiative across our organization that we launched in 2022. Our goal is to skill 1 million people worldwide on our ServiceNow platform, on our Now platform. And we want to do that. Our goal in 2022 was to skill up 1 million people by the close of 2024, which is coming very soon, by creating simpler, faster, much more equitable paths to career on the ServiceNow platform, within the ServiceNow ecosystem. So Rise Up as a program aims to help people of all backgrounds, as I've mentioned before. We're not just trying to be exclusive here. To start and accelerate, your technical career with training, coaching, networking, and also that hands-on experience, particularly in our organization, that's really important. So this has meant that we've had to look, as I said, beyond a person's level of formal education. It's not just about whether you came out with a computer science degree, but we're considering everything right across the board, including interpersonal skills, active listening and learning, critical thinking, and analysis as a foundation for a technical career. We've realized that there are a lot of other skills that are absolutely transferable into a technical role or a technology-based role. So we're really much more focused on a number of those things. Rise Up is open to everyone and anyone interested in joining a workforce, a high-tech workforce like ours, to really kind of like remove those challenges, remove those issues, those barriers that we've had before, to actually enter into this world in this tech world in terms of a tech career. We've launched so many resources and tools to actually make sure that we make it easier and reduce that barrier. There's more than 600 free courses available on our Now Learning platform, which provides a suite of like on-demand courses. We have live classes. We have hands-on labs that allow individuals to really work and study at your own pace. A really, really amazing program. We're coming to the end of the program. It's going to be interesting to see what we do from here, because I'm pretty certain, if I know my organization, there's more to come, for sure. So that's Rise Up. And what we also have is our next generation program, which is actually embedded in a part of the Rise Up program, which provides training and certification and entry-level employment into the ServiceNow ecosystem. So this is really around kind of like getting it's more like a next-gen professionals program. So it's actually promoting digital readiness as a driving force. We launched this again in 2022, and we've actually been really, really successful. We've connected over about 2,200 next-gen graduates into employment opportunities. Since the program started, we've engaged with, I think, something around 10,000 participants, and we've helped more than 5,000 of those participate connect to more jobs. So it's been a really, really fantastic program, really looking at that kind of like entry-level employment as a part of our overall Rise Up program. I will say that the Rise Up program, with its target of 1 million, with a month less, we are pretty much there. We're going to hit our goal of getting to 1 million by the end of the year.
Wonderful. So we definitely are helping everyone rise up with ServiceNow. I'm going to pause on my question because I'm seeing audience questions coming in. I want to give us an opportunity to address the questions that our audience has. So this first question is for both of you. And the question is, what are some ways you encourage your teams at ServiceNow to think outside of the box and innovate? Who'd like to take that first?
I think one sentence, just ask a lot of questions. Organically, you will come across certain spaces where there doesn't seem to be a logical answer to it, and you can always solution for it. So my advice is ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I'd say a couple of other things that I found work for me as well. One is, shut up as a manager, as a leader, because oftentimes leaders think that they have the answers, and we don't have the answers. So I think giving our team space by not trying to problem solve ourselves is really, really important. So kind of like sit back and see how the conversation goes, and you'll find the answers. And I think what's also important that I found as a leader is to actually create the environment that people feel that they can say things and share things that may not be the right answer, or that may not be quite where we were going, but they're free enough to explore those ideas. And I think you have to create an environment that allows people to be comfortable in doing that. So I think that's really important. So for me, I use informality, laughter, humor, and things just to create an environment, just to make sure that people don't feel that, if they say a stupid thing, that they're going to get kind of like, pounced on. So I think step back and don't do the talking, but also create an environment where people feel at ease in terms of talking about things. Because I assure you, I know this from my own personal experience, employees, my team, always have the answer, always.
Thank you. All right, our next audience question. This also is for both of you. In your experience, how do you balance the excitement of innovation with the practicalities of risk management? And also, how do you foster a culture where feedback is welcome and acted upon at ServiceNow? So let's take the first question. Alonzo, we're going to start with you again. How do you balance the excitement of innovation with the practicalities of risk management?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many contexts to that, right? I mean, we are a tech organization, and I think in the industry we've got to be up there when it comes to innovative tech organizations, right? There is always new technologies and new solutions and new ideas and new paths to go down in terms of the technology. And I sit in our sales organization, so it's about how do we get that, and how do we kind of like get that innovation journey out to our customers with the practicalities of actually, we've got to still do what's available to us, that's real in our hands here today. That is kind of like unfinished business, maybe from a sales perspective. So there's a balance in terms of how do you go after innovation and manage that part of the side of our business versus actually doing what's here and available today, and making sure that you kind of like manage that journey, particularly when it comes to customers. And I think the answer is that you have to do both, because I think both feed the other. So innovation isn't necessarily about ditching this stuff and just going after that. I think I see innovation as a kind of like it's almost like as the future, as the mission, as the North Star, right? So it's not kind of like, you don't ditch everything. It's kind of like, this is where we can go, but kind of like do the foundations right, manage your risks, and we'll get there. So we try not to see them as two separate things. We either do this or we either do that. See it as, the future, the near-term future from a ServiceNow point of view, but can like use it as a guidance point to your normal business as usual process, which includes, managing risk and other things. That's how I would kind of like frame it in my organization, for certainly. They're not two separate things.
Okay. And second part of the question is, how do you foster a culture where feedback is welcomed and acted upon?
Again, this is something where I think ServiceNow excels. So we have what we call EVS, an employee voice survey. It's a survey that we push out to all of our organization, every employee, every year, where it's a really comprehensive set of questions that we ask our employees across multiple factors of their employee experience, and just to get that feedback in terms of how our organization, how our individuals, how our employees feel, about their managers, about the strategy of the organization, about the culture, about about a range of different things, about how well we're doing when it comes to things like diversity and inclusion is one of the factors that we look at, right? And I think that feedback is great. So given the opportunity to get feedback, but what's really impressive, I think, in ServiceNow is how much the leadership all the way down to management, the whole of our management and leadership organization really take that seriously, review the results, and actually take action to actually make sure that we address the things where we need to improve. We do that every year. So and we've got the kind of like a continuous improvement feedback loop off the back of that as well. So I think we do it as an organization really well, and that really seeps into our kind of like culture, and it also seeps into our kind of like growth conversations that we have with our leaders and with our managers in those conversations as well. So I think we're really, really good at making sure that we get really great feedback without fear of retribution or whatever else. So we make sure that that's very, very clear. That's again a part of our culture. But then we act on that culture, and I think act on that feedback. And I think it's important for our organization, for our employees to see us acting on that. Otherwise, the feedback will kind of like stop or slow down in the future, right? So I think we're doing really, really well. Our last EVS or EVS score was really, really great. It was, we'd improved from previous year by a good set of points. That indicates that we are listening, we are making the right changes, and we are improving. And hopefully, as we go into the next year's EVS, it will improve again.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, Serbi, this next question I want to direct at you.
Yep.
So there is a member of the audience who recently launched their own DEI organization. And one of the good things that came out of the post-George Floyd era was people being open to change. As we know, things are changing, as with life and the world. And we're seeing a lot of those commitments to anti-racism not necessarily still holding up. The question is it our responsibility to hold people accountable? And if so, what are ways you might recommend that people do that?
Yep. I think it resonates very well with what sometimes goes through my mind as well, where just like, why doesn't everybody just understand that this is an important part of the way we work and the way we live, and let's just get on the plan and make things happen. But it's very, very important to also give grace, not just to others, but to yourself as well. It's an uphill battle trying to change people from how they fundamentally have operated from so long. And I'm not talking about who they are at a core, because we all are good people. We all want to do the right thing, but it's just different ways in which it manifests, right? With respect to willingness to change and ability to change, these are two very different prerogatives, right? When we hear of atrocities or when we hear of inequities in action, the normal reaction is for us, oh yes, this has to change. However, the process that involves this change is a difficult one. It's a prickly one. It requires a lot of introspection and examining your own self on where you're falling short and what changes you need to make. I think one of the key aspects is we cannot hold other people accountable for changing the way that they work as much as they can hold themselves accountable. And how can we drive that and how can we foster that is to show them a path, right? Take it one section at a time. We don't need to change the world all in one go. We can start, right? And goes back to the point that I mentioned of everybody needs support, everybody needs guidance, everybody needs tools to be able to successfully approach the change, understand it, relate to it to a large extent, and then put it into action. So as DEI practitioners, I think very important to not just consider the passion of the person, but also assess where they are on their change journey, right? Are they at a position where they've done some of the work, some of the research, found a way to elevate their own understanding of various diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives? Or is that something that you will have to provide them guidance on, right? So where they are on their change journey, assessing that as a DEI practitioner is very important so that you can build solutions which cater to them, right? And when we're talking about organizations like ServiceNow, which are consistently growing, which are consistently thriving, and as Alonso mentioned, innovating, you have to start thinking about these things at scale, because you cannot sit with individual leaders and individual managers and find a way that works exclusively for them, right? Again, going to the point that Alonso mentioned, if you give people the opportunity, there is appetite for solutioning quite a lot. So as long as you can set the basic framework for them, hey, what's your level of competency or what's your level of understanding at the moment? I can give you the first 5 steps, and then you can sprint on ahead using that guidance that I've given you. That's my 2 cents.
I just add to that in terms of some of my experiences, having been here during that kind of like period of George Floyd. I think, and I recognize a comment around everybody leaning in at that time. And it was great. I think I remember having conversations with many people how it wasn't just one community that was leaning in, it was all a community. I remember seeing a march in my hometown in Oxford, and it was the first time I saw a march that was absolutely multiracial. It wasn't just, Black people standing up and saying enough, it was the whole of the community. So I think a lot of people saw that as a significant change in the journey of anti-racism, right? So I think there was a lot of hope put at that time. There was definitely an awakening at that time, and I'm sure that there was a lot of commitments that were made that were probably broken over time. I think that's the case. I think that is, dare I say it, normal in some ways. I think organizations tend to want to be I think it happens, right? I think the important thing that I think I see continuing is the change of the narrative and the openness, back to what we were saying before, in terms of actually continuing to having open conversations, continue to have it to make sure that people like me or people of color or people that are different have spaces to discuss things with themselves and with others, that have access to leadership, to have those open discussions, that leaders have open ears. So I think as long as those things are maintained off the back of that, in terms of the awareness is still there, and there's real opportunities for me and others to share our voice, and I think that's really important. Where other organizations broke their promises in terms of programs or whatever, I think that, that's always going to be a challenge.
Well, thank you both for your insight. Now, my last question for you as we look to wrap up, we only have a few minutes left, but I would ask you both to share with the audience when they're thinking about how they can break barriers within their companies, with what they're looking at doing related to their professions. What, if you could give the audience some advice, what would it be? Surbi, let's start with you.
Absolutely. I think one is developing an understanding of where you are. Breaking barriers is not always about waving a flag in the air and going full speed ahead and being like, I'm going to change this or I'm going to destroy it. You need to have a very realistic understanding of where you are as an individual, both mentally, professionally, emotionally, and physically as well. A lot of that has an impact on the amount of resilience that you will be able to show, because that's what it takes to change a system, a person, or like group of things overall. So you need to have high amounts of resilience to be able to bring any sort of change. So understanding where you are as an individual is very, very important, even before you embark on something, right? The second thing I think is we need to build a set of values that are non-negotiables for you as an individual, irrespective of what company you're part of, irrespective of the role, irrespective of what goes on around you, your set of values. And this has got, I think, very little to do with work and everything to do with life and how we are as individuals, right? So it doesn't need to necessarily fall in line with some of the corporate jargon that we've gotten used to using, but it could be the simple things of, hey, this is my value system and these are my non-negotiables. How does what you're trying to achieve or the barrier that you're trying to break help you live your value every day, right? Does it hinder you or does it support you in living your values every single day? I think I draw a lot of inspiration from that. I want to leave, in the famous words of our CEO, I want to leave the world a better place than we found it. And I try very hard every single day in terms of activities that I do, projects that I run, the resilience that I show in multiple different things that I want to change on. How does it best serve this purpose that I am operating with? So I think that would be my piece of advice to get started on. Of course, the audience that we joined with today is more than capable of charting their own path, because that's what it takes. You have to do it, keeping your own unique abilities in mind. But I think these are just starting points that will help, push you onto that path.
I mean, I agree 100% with everything that you said there, right? I was thinking actually, as you was talking about breaking barriers, I do think maybe there's a branding issue there, right? Because I think it's kind of like almost like unsurmountable. Sometimes when we think about barriers, we think about something that's unsurmountable. And the truth is it's not, right? The truth is, in my experience, that breaking barrier is a perception. It's in my mind in terms of that barrier, right? It's not really a barrier. I mean, I think the thing that I learned too late in my own career is that, particularly when it comes to climbing mountains or breaking barriers, I always think of my individual effort. And the truth is, I've been way more successful when I've engaged with others than I have been trying to do it myself. If I can just do this harder, if I can just work that, if I can just get this, that really hasn't worked for me. Yes, performance and grit and those things are important, don't get me wrong, but actually I think most of my success has come from actually getting help from others and working with others and not doing it alone. And there's lots of people that can help, right? It's not just the senior person, it's kind of like your colleague, it's your friends, it's your family, it's a number of people. But I think being able to articulate what you want, what your values are, where you want to go with others right across the range, they will give you ideas, they will give you guidance, they may be sponsors, they may be mentors, they may end up being coaches. But I think if you try to do it on your own, that's when we end up with this image of breaking barriers and climbing mountains on our own. It's a struggle and you're sweating. I don't think it has to be like that. Engage more people, build networks to help you, because I think you'll definitely get there faster in whatever career, in whatever role.
Thank you both. I have enjoyed our conversation, and I hope that our audience has enjoyed our conversation as well. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about ServiceNow and our opportunities, I encourage you to visit our career booth at the virtual career fair coming up tomorrow. Meg, I'm going to turn it back over to you and say thank you again to Power to Fly and the entire Power to Fly audience.